Hi, welcome to the It's Time for Breakthrough podcast, where we dive into topics on freedom and inner healing, all from the perspective of staying connected to yourself, to others, and to the Lord, and knowing that right here, right now, it really is time for breakthrough. I'm your host, Casalee, and let's jump right in. Hi guys, welcome back to the It's Time for Breakthrough podcast. I'm your host, Casalee, and today I'm here with Abram Goff. Woo-hoo. Super exciting. I'm going to let Abram introduce himself and what he does, but Abram is working with Moral Revolution, and I'm so excited that he's here. We get to dive into a topic that I think is going to be super beneficial for whatever phase of life you're into. And we're going to talk about understanding addictive behaviors. Yep. And you have a fun little title when you talk about stuff like this.
I do.
Yeah, you want to share?
Yeah, this is how I actually got into Moral Revolution is I love Jesus, but... ... You're like, I love Jesus, but I keep doing this thing. I love Jesus, but I'm stuck here. I love Jesus, and that was kind of part of my story and how I got into Moral Revolution. Mm-hmm. So to start with, if you don't know Moral Revolution, we love to talk about sex and sexuality. So all things relationships, sexuality, no matter what season of life you're in, we want to help the church celebrate God's design for it, heal from issues and things that we've just walked through in life that are causing issues with us, mm-hmm. and then walk into freeness, wholeness, and fulfillment of sexuality and relationships.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I love it. How long have you been with Moral Revolution?
Ooh, about 10 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you've got history.
Yeah, a little bit.
Talking about things like this.
We were joking beforehand that I want to get one of these signs for our podcast that just says sexy times. I don't know if it'll be approved or not, but it'd be
waiting
fun.
On the budget for that.
We'll see. Yeah.
So I would love to jump right in with all of this. So can you talk about what do you mean when we say addictive behaviors?
Yeah. So I it's like, to reference my title there, is like, it's something that you keep kind of find yourself going back to over and over again. Mm-hmm. And you don't want to, or you mm-hmm. find out like, hey, the fruit of this thing is not leading me to the type of life that I want, or the type of man or the woman that I want to be. And so it's a behavior you kind of get stuck in a cycle in. And that cycle could be every day, or it could be, it's twice a week, or it's every 6 months I find myself go back to this thing that I really hate doing.
Yeah.
Violating my conscience, violating my relationship with God, violating my relationship with another person. So it's one of these things that just kind of keeps you get stuck, and you're like, I don't actually know why I'm still here.
Yeah. So I think with that, if we just jump right in, how do you know, like you just gave some kind of pointers of if this is something you keep kind of going back to, how do you know if you're like, this is an addictive behavior versus this is something that just kind of happens every once in a while?
I think for me at least, and the way that I like to walk people through this is finding out what's going on underneath, like what's mm-hmm. driving this actual behavior. It's like, it's something that just happens every once in a while. I'm like, what do you mean it just happens?
Yeah.
I just happen to look at porn again. And you're like, okay, like when's the last time you happened to look at porn, Or is it something that you find yourself going back to? So one of the things that I like to ask, and just to kind of unpack is, mm-hmm. One of the things I like to just kind of unpack is just to go, okay, what's leading this behavior?
Yeah.
And one thing is going, okay, right before you went to this thing, mm-hmm. what was happening in your life?
Yeah.
What emotions were coming up? What was happening in your week? What was happening in your relationships? Because something was stirring up something inside, and then you go, I actually found that I keep going back to this thing over and over again. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, is it an addiction? Or like, can you stop?
Yeah.
Like, I can stop. I'm like, I just don't want to stop. I'm like, If you're justifying yourself that way, I call BS.
Yeah.
Most of the people are like, I can stop, I just don't want to. You're like, well, I don't think you can.
Yeah.
And so starting to recognize, going back and forth and going, okay, there's no judgment on the behavior. Let's pause and go, hey, I have this behavior that I'm not sure that I love. Mm-hmm. I'll just say it that way.
Yeah.
Like it could be good, it could be bad. I'm like, okay. Mm-hmm. I find being judgmental towards behaviors is not really helpful.
Yeah.
Because it puts you in a place of shame, it places you in a place of defense or a place of justification. So you're either trying to go, well, it's fine that I do this because they do it, or because, it's actually okay to do this thing. Or it puts you in a shame where you're just like, well, I just hate myself and I'm horrible, and why does Jesus even love me, and who loves me, and are people better off without me here? And you just start spiraling.
Yeah.
So instead of going like, let's pause all the judgments, and Aaron Zint puts it this way of putting the judge aside, but bringing in like the investigator or the scientist that just goes, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder why that happened.
Yeah, asking all of the questions and just like, okay, look at when X, Y, and Z happens. Because it's almost like addiction can become a formula. If you look at it in when I feel this, then, or if this situation happens, for example, if I like am in a situation talking to someone and then they make a joke about a relationship that I don't have. And then you're like, oh, every time someone says that, I get triggered, or around that, then when I get triggered, I isolate. And then when I isolate, I look at porn. And it's like you go down this rabbit hole of, you can almost find the formula of when this happens, I go down this way, and lead yourself to what cued me to watch porn, what cued me to go to this person that I know is not good for me. And watching that to identify, oh, maybe I am addicted and I just need to, recognize this is an addictive behavior and block out all of the shame that comes with it.
Yeah. I'd say there's almost always a formula there. Yeah. Most of the time it's subconscious for us. Because I believe most of the time that we're trying to get another need met or trying to cope with something. We can get on that in a second. But it's a lot of times it's a subconscious thing. Yeah. So if you know you're addicted, you're like, well, I'm here. I clicked on this video because I have a fear, or I have a concern that I don't really want to admit to myself, or maybe someone in my life I see this thing. And so even just recognizing it, going, okay, there's a formula there. It's most likely subconscious. So let's just look at the formula and going, oh, a series of events is causing something inside of you, and this behavior is the solution to those events. This behavior is a tool to deal with these events. Yeah. And then it may not be the best tool. It may not be the one we want to keep. It may not be the solution we like. You know, to quote Aaron Zint again, he's like, porn is not the problem. Porn is a solution. It's just a really bad solution. Yeah. And so going, hey, let's actually, looking at that formulated out there and going, okay, great. What's the actual, let's not look at the solution, the tool that we have. Let's look at what series of events, what triggers, what underlying events is stirring up something inside that's causing me to get to this point. Yeah.
That's so good. So coming back to what you kind of talked about a little bit was, it's almost pointing to a need that we are longing to be met. Yeah. Can you speak to having needs that you need to be met and having them met with addictive behaviors, and then also being met? How do we get those needs met? One, how do we recognize that we have needs in these areas, and what are, like, how do I recognize that I have a need for intimacy or a need for connection and things like that, and not steering towards, I have a need, so I'm going to go to an addictive behavior.
Sure, yeah. I like to call them soul needs at More Evolution. So we go, hey, there's you have different needs. If you replay your situation and you go, hey, right before this event happened, what was I looking for? What did this thing promise me? Like, what did the porn promise me? What did that hookup promise me? What did that relationship? What did that argument promise me? There was something that it promised me. It was that solution. So going, what's that thing right beforehand that it said, I can give you this? And so sometimes the more that we practice self-awareness, the more you're like, oh, this is the thing I need. But for me, I walked into this and I was like, I don't know. I just thought I was horny. Like, I just thought, I dealt with masturbation for years, and I thought, oh, I'm a teenager. I have lots of hormones. What am I looking for? Boobs? Yeah. I'm like, I don't. And so we like to boil it down to go, okay, let's start with these 4 needs that everybody has. There's intimacy, being known and seen and accepted for who you are. Connection, which is I belong to something bigger than myself. Yeah. So I'm not an isolated incident in the universe, but I'm like, I actually have a play in. Comfort, which also can look like escape. So you're like, oh, I just need to check out, or I need to feel comforted here. And then having value. And so if we want, we can unpack those. Otherwise, we have resources we could share to kind of slow down and go, okay, if, for instance, if you're thinking, man, like, no one really knows me, no one likes me, I don't feel seen, I feel discarded, you're like, oh, then it's probably an intimacy thing you're looking for. If you're thinking, like, for a lot of men, he's like, I don't have what it takes, I don't feel like I'm there, I don't feel competent, I don't feel like I can measure up, and you're like, that's probably an intimacy thing. Like, you're looking for someone to see you, meet you, and go, no, you do have what it takes, you're there, you've got this. Yeah, so we could talk about the other ones, or we can...
Yeah, just unpack them a little bit for the other ones.
Great. So, so that's intimacy. Connection is that thing of just feeling like I feel distant, I feel disconnected, I feel separated from everybody.
Yeah.
Let me rewind and go back to intimacy for a second. So some healthy ways maybe to get these met is to start by journaling, or start by talking to someone and just going, hey, here's my hopes, my fears, my dreams. Here's what's going on inside. Someone said, what's going on? I don't know. What's going good in your life? What's going bad in your life? What are you afraid of right now? There's just some questions to kind of go, this is beyond the weather's nice, the sports team did good, like this is beyond everything's fine or everything's chaotic. And it lets you start to pull stuff out and go, this is what I'm afraid of. This is what I'm feeling. And you being able to show up authentically, and someone's able to meet you there and go, cool, I still love you.
Yeah.
Don't think anything less of you. In fact, I appreciate you sharing. I'm glad that I get to know more of you rather than just the surface level. Yeah. So intimacy, there's some things there for it. Connection, it's like, I feel disconnected from everybody. I don't feel like I measure up. I feel isolated. A lot of times, some form of volunteerism, giving prophetic words to somebody, asking what God's doing in your life, even can help you go, oh, I feel stalled out right now. Yeah. So for instance, I feel stalled out, so I'm just in this, I keep going back to the same relationship that I hate. Yeah. It's not a good one, it's an abusive one. Or I keep going back, whether it's with a person or with porn or with a website or with a Netflix show, I keep going back. It's like, oh, because I feel stalled. So asking, going, okay, God, what are you doing in my life? And how does my life fit into what you're doing in the earth? Yeah. Because then it gives you like this massive scale of like, oh, this is what's happening in eternity. And I feel like I'm a part of this. I feel like I'm a place of it. And most of that one you can't do by yourself. You kind of have to, it involves you showing up with other people and going, I need to give to you, and you need to give to me so that we are connected. The third one is comfort or escape. And this is for me, this is probably one of my hardest ones for me to get. I can tell about what's going on. Cool. Doesn't scare me. Doesn't fear me. The connection, I feel like I'm kind of driven by purpose. After some counseling to an unhealthy degree, so I'm working on that. But
it's like, please fix my problems, please.
The comfort ones, is the easiest, I think, but also the scariest for me personally, because it's like it's taking care of yourself. I'll come back to another way we can kind of find some of these things, but that looks like watching a movie. It looks like eating pizza. It looks like going on a run. Like these things are ways that you can kind of hijack your system that's starting to spiral and go, okay, I'm going to treat you nicely, because at that point you feel anxious, you feel overwhelmed, you can feel scared. I have a new baby boy at home. He's 15 months now, but he's really at like the emotional stage. And for me to show up to him and go, it's fine. You're fine. That's no big deal. Yeah. Like, that's not what you need. He needs to be taught how to soothe himself, how to, like, everything's okay. Like, let me come alongside you and be in this. And so a lot of times we need connection or comfort. And we see this a lot. I think intimacy and this comfort is two of the big stuff we see in sexual things, because people are looking for a way to self-soothe themselves. They're looking for a way to escape the chaos, the anxiety, and they know, I can go to this relationship, I can go to this screen, I can do it, and I can get the hit of dopamine, I can get the hit of endorphins, I can feel that relief just for a second. I hate myself afterwards, but I can't think to afterwards because I'm just dealing with so much right now. And I think you see a lot of pastors get into relationships, having an affair, doing these stuff, and you're like, what happened? Like, you love Jesus, what happened there? And you're like, oh, you had a lot going on, and you had no one to talk to. You had no one to be able to kind of share the load. You needed a form of escape, but we probably Christianized it, where we went, well, I'm the good Christian, so I'm going to go serve more. And you're like, it's not actually what you needed. You needed a day off. You needed some time to relax, Jay Valentine has a story that I think just encompasses it really well. He says he was walking into a grocery store over here, and he watched this. He walked in the store, and this woman walked by, and he felt himself just go, whoa. And he's like, okay, wait, like, what's happening? And he's like, I'm married, I have kids, I'm not looking for like anything, but what inside of me just left there? What was I looking for? And so he just stopped, and I mean, you guys know Jay. He's like brilliant at all this stuff. Yeah. So he just stopped, and he's like, okay, what am I looking for? And he's like, adventure. I'm looking for a sense of adventure, escape. And he's like, okay, what happened today? Yeah. He's like, oh, I've had 3 really big counseling sessions this morning that were just heavy. And I'm looking for something I'm looking to offload. I'm looking to kind of escape some of that in a healthy way. You know, there's unhealthy and healthy escape. So he's like, okay, what do I need? He's like, fishing. He's like, I want to go fishing. And so he called his assistant. He's like, hey, can you move the meetings this afternoon? I need some time. It's like he saved his marriage by going fishing. Yeah. But it's little things like that of being aware of going, okay, what do I need? Or like, I need this sense of adventure. I need this sense of like relief, or I need a sense of comfort. I don't need to push through. I don't need to be the man and be the savior. I don't need to do this stuff. I don't need to stack more on. I need to figure out how to offload. So then the 4th thing is, it's the most Christian one. It's that you need value. And this is the one you just have to get from God. It's coming going to him and going, okay, what do you think about me? What do you like about me? Also tell me about yourself. Like, sometimes we go to God and we're like, tell me about me, but it's like, we can't, what we're actually needing is to see him differently. And when we see him differently, it like flips something about us. Yeah. So going, hey, tell me about you. I want to know you. And then I want to know what you think about me. Yeah. Like, tell me uniquely what you like and think about me. And that gives it the value that you're looking for. Yeah, that's so good. And I think also we have spaces where there are times where I just need to sit with the Lord, but I think I need intimacy, or I think I need connection. Yeah. And so navigating, how do we identify where we are and like what need do I actually need to get met? Because if they can't overlap, but if we confuse them, we can get in some very tricky waters of almost leading into addictive behaviors, because I found the wrong need that I thought I needed to get met. I doubled down on the wrong thing.
Wrong thing. This is not where I needed to go. Abort mission. Wave the white flag. Right. I'm done. And so I think identifying what our needs are and how we need to get them met and when we need each one is so significant and helpful. And so in that,
because sometimes you see people spiritualize their dysfunction. Yeah. They're like, well, I just need to pray more. I just need to fast. I need to lean in. I pray about the word. And like, they're just getting in there. I'm like, which is all good and is needed at some time. But sometimes you're like, bro, you need a nap. Yep. And you need a conversation with another person. Yep. Because you're spiraling right now into spirituality. Yeah. You need to be grounded, and you need some sleep. I got a kid. Some sweep. Yeah, so you need some sweep and a good nap. But it just resets you, and then you're like, oh, okay, I'm functioning back again. Yeah, and that's so good. And so I think something we talked about earlier was how the neurological pathways in your brain kind of assist in this addictive behavior. Can you just talk about that? Yeah. So this is like, we'll nerd out for a second time. We'll put your glasses up.
Buckle in. If you're not a science person, that's okay. Yeah. Don't run away.
You'll make it.
You'll make it. It's all right.
But if you imagine your brain is like a giant chunk of clay or Play-Doh, right? Whenever you do something, it carves a pathway in it. It goes, okay, this is the way how you do it. And your brain just gone, that's how I understand this situation, this scenario. And your brain is set to want to reproduce and go on autopilot as easy as possible. Yeah. Like, that's why you brushing your teeth and you're like, did I do both sides? Or you're like driving home and you're like, I'm in my driveway and I don't remember leaving work. Like, I hope I didn't hit anybody.
You're like, please say I didn't.
Okay, there's no blood. Okay, thanks, Jesus. That got dark. But you know, I mean, like, your brain's set on autopilot. And so there's so many tasks throughout the day that your brain goes, we did it this way so many times. Great, I got it. I can take care of it, while it frees up all this other processing space to deal with emotions, to deal with problem solving, to deal with fun, to deal with all the other stuff. And so in our behaviors, in all behaviors, but especially addictive behaviors, we've carved a pathway, and most likely at the end of that pathway was a reward. Yeah. We got the dopamine hit, we got the endorphins, your brain went, that was good, let's do it again. Yeah. And so the next time we get to a similar situation, you carve this way. You know, like, think about it. The first time you go to an event and you're kind of nervous to talk to people, you're like, I don't really know what to say. But you have a successful first conversation, and it left, and you're like, okay, that was good. So you go to the next person that you're meeting, and you try the exact same questions. Yeah. And you're like, okay, that went good, but the third question didn't go good. And so that's exactly what your brain's doing. You're like, okay, I have this anxiety, I have this fear. I need to know how to deal with it. And so subconsciously, our brain has already been doing this in the background. It's like, hey, the last time we had this anxiety over a test that you were taking, this last time you had a big deadline coming up and you didn't know what to do with, we went and looked at porn. That worked really well. We got a big hit at the end. Let's go do that.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you can even find yourself similar to the way you're driving. Mm-hmm. You're like, oh, I'm just here. You headed towards that addictive behavior.
Yeah.
Headed towards the alcohol. Headed towards the rage. Headed towards the porn. Headed towards the hookup. Headed towards all these things like the abusive behavior or the boyfriend, the situationship. Right?
Yeah.
It's not a boyfriend. It's a situationship. You find yourself headed towards it, and you're like, I don't even know how I got here. I don't want to be here. And I'll say something that's a little controversial and a little sensitive.
Go for it.
If you can catch yourself and you can just slow down on the way to that behavior, that's already a win. Like, that's a win just to go, hey, great, you're noticing. Like, you're picking it up. And so that pathway that has been carved over and over again, what you can actually do, what you're doing is you're getting to a point where you're going, okay, wait, I want to go a different direction. I actually don't want to go this way. And so you can start to carve a different pathway. You can start to choose a different outcome. It's like the choose your own ending books, like, except you have a ton of them. But you get to that point and you're like, oh, something's coming up and I want to do it differently. Yeah. And even if this is a cycle and addictive behavior over and over again, even if you end up doing the same thing again, but this time you were able to slow down, this time you were able to go, I don't want to do this. This time you were able to go, what am I looking for? Yeah. And you still end up there. I'm like, great, that's a win. Yeah. Like, that's progress. Yeah. You're identifying. You caught the roadblock here. Now let's see if we can catch it a little earlier so that we can redirect the train earlier. Yeah. And so finding out, getting back through there, what is it I'm looking for? Mm-hmm. What's it promising me? Yeah. What am I feeling? All those things are good. And like, okay, now what's another way to get those met? Yeah. We said this earlier, but all of these things, your soul needs, your like the intimacy, connection, comfort, value, all these things are great, and they're kind of more top level type of thinking of like, oh, I can kind of see it, and it's like a tool you use every day. I use it every day, every week. But sometimes there's something that you just don't get. Like I'm asking these questions, but I keep going to some place that I don't. That's when there's your conscious brain and your subconscious brain, and there's a lot of stuff that we've just learned as kids. And so this is not like blame your dad for everything or blame your mom. It's not that, but it is foundational thoughts, beliefs about ourselves. Happen before we're 5, a lot of them even before we're 3, and so being able to recognize those and kind of going, oh, I picked up something down here that I need some help identifying. Like, this is a great time why you book an appointment with the Transformation Center, because these people are great at what they do. They come through and they go, hey, great. These are great tools, but sometimes you just get stuck. Like, my car, like, oh, there's weird noises happening with my car. So I use all the knowledge and tools and Google that I can use to figure out. I don't know. So I go to my dad and I was like, Dad, what tools do you have? And so he looks at it and, well, is it this, and this, and that didn't solve it. And sometimes you got to go to a mechanic and go, hey, I don't know what that knocking is. I've tried all this stuff. And he'll sit and listen and go, yep, I know what that is. Yeah. I've seen it 100 times. You're like, great. And that's why we're all proponents of counseling and Sozo and all these tools, because sometimes you just need an expert to be able to come in and go, oh, I've heard that knocking before. I've heard that sound. Or sometimes it's a spiritual thing. You're like, oh, this is a spirit that needs dealt with in a different way. And you're like, okay, great. Yeah. Like, can you help me? Because all I know is this knocking's really annoying. Yeah. And they're like, yeah, great. We do this all the time. And so, all of this to say, there's a lot of times subconscious things that have happened. An example of one of these that came up in counseling with me is, like, when it comes to sharing how I'm doing, like, I have a problem and I need help. I need to ask for help, and I have problems doing that. Like, I know it's good. Cognitively, I get it all, but I still have issues. Yeah. And tracking back and to go, oh, both my parents, my dad was a pastor, both my parents were teachers, loved Jesus, pouring out their heart for anybody and everybody. Yeah. But sometimes growing up, they didn't mean to, but the message that I received was there are a lot more people in a lot more pain dealing with stuff. So I can figure out how to take care of this myself. Yeah. I don't need to ask for help. Yeah. And it wasn't intentionally, but this type of behavior was something I couldn't access. Yeah. Like, I needed some people to ask me questions and help axis. And so there's these deeper parts of our brain processing and these neural pathways that are just a little deeper that you just need somebody to help to go, oh,
yeah,
this is where that came from. Okay, let's invite Jesus in here and let's work through some of those so that we have a different outcome.
Yeah, and there's no shame in asking for help either.
For sure.
And I think a lot of what's happened in the church has been kind of like what you're saying of like, everybody else has more pain than me, and it's a competition of who has the most pain, because whoever has the most gets the win, which is somebody else's help. And it's like, that's not how it works. Or like, everybody else has other people to deal with, so I'll just run to Jesus. And it's like, that's a great place to go. Like, yes, please go to Jesus. Start there. Perfect. Step one, great. But also, we were meant for community, and we were built for people. And there's a reason that we're the body of Christ. Like, I am probably like a wrist, like in the whole body. Like, you'd be like, oh, well, why is the wrist like, you don't even think about the wrist. You're like arm, elbow, leg, like, but it's like, oh, you couldn't move your hand, or it wouldn't be connected to your arm without the wrist. So I'm like, the wrist is significant, but it's a part of the entire body. And so I can't, if I was the wrist, I couldn't do what the foot does. And so you bring a different perspective of, if I come to you with an issue, if I try to solve it all on my own, like, I can't. Like, most of the time I can't. And so Jesus built us for community. And so we get to, like, community, part of that, I think, is what Jesus died for. Like, it's what his life paid for. And so for us to live not only in full connection with him, but in full connection with other people in a healthy way. And so being able to do that is when I need to ask someone for help, because I am from the South, where as a Southern people don't ask for help. And so God help us.
We have the phrase, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Pull
yourself up by your own bootstraps. So
you're old enough to put your shoes on, you can take care of it.
You're fine. You're fine. Everything is going to be, we're going to coast by yourself. And so it's in that of being like, okay, I was actually designed for, community was bought for me, and having healthy connection with people was paid for on the cross, as well as my own life and salvation. And in that, there's no shame of having to ask for help. And I think it's also part of the healing journey of, also, I will say, if you're someone who's dealing with addiction and you're like, oh, ask somebody for help, don't go to the person that's also dealing with addiction to help you. I know it seems like they get it. Go with someone on the other side of the addiction that's like, I can relate to you. I can sympathize with you. I can show you how I got out, show you the resources I use, give you contacts, but don't run to someone who's in the same seat as you.
You'll get a lot of empathy and validation. And then you all settle in it together.
You will throw yourself a pity party of, I'm in addiction, you're also in addiction. Cool. Silence. And there's
I need to confess happening. I messed up too. Okay, cool, thanks. So we're not going to mess up anymore, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I'm like, cool, we don't have any tools to help ourselves.
And then 2 weeks later, I messed up. and it's a cycle. And then you might become addicted to addictive people. And that's just a whole thing that we will dive into at a later time. But in that, all of these things that we're talking about, I want to give some practical tools of like, okay, we're talking about, we have the needs, we can get needs met, we can identify our needs. What are some tools that we can use in order to help cope besides addictive behaviors?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Can
you give me an example?
So I think, like, I have friends who, they're like, I will go for a run. And I'm like, okay, you felt fear. You're afraid of something. Are you running from your fear? And they're like, maybe. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe let's not go for a run. But then some of them are like, no, when I run, when I feel fear, I feel the presence of God come, and my fear is like, I feel my fear leave when I go for a run with the Lord. And there are ways that we can cope with pain that isn't like, I'm going to porn, or I'm going to masturbation, or I'm running to things that there are the quote unquote obvious bad things to run to, because too much of anything can possibly turn into a bad thing. But what are some tools that you have seen almost kind of help in the midst of people who have come out of addictive behaviors sustain freedom almost in that?
I mean, I think a great way to even start to approach this, we'll talk practical in a second, but self-care is better than self-soothing. Most of the time in behavior, like, we're trying to check behaviorisms, we're in the process of self-soothing. we're overcoming pain, anxiety, fear, loneliness. Like we're trying to soothe something.
Yeah.
And so the opposite of that, a lot of times when we're dealing with behaviors, we're like, I just want to be free. I want to be free. I want to be free. And so free in our head is the absence of this behavior we don't like. But if you look at self-care, like genuine self-care, not like trendy self-care, which means just like, treat yourself.
Treat yourself. I bought a $7-8 cup of coffee and I went to the spa and then all these things.
That's splurging on yourself, which is fine every once in a while. But like, how are you actually taking care of your soul and your body, your spirit? Like, becoming whole actually leads to freedom. Yeah. So, so good. So let's, instead of just trying to pursue freedom, let's start looking at wholeness, and some of the times that means you almost pause on the behaviorism, you pause on the addiction and you go, okay, this is the thing I'm stuck on, but I'm going to pause on it and I'm going to go, okay, what's underneath? What needs healed? What needs taken care of? Yeah. Another one of the things that seems very basic is just eating healthy, like getting nutrients in your body. Yeah. The reason I say some of this stuff, it seems very blanket statement, but if you're looking at just like, let's do a deep, you're doing a cleanse of your brain and your body. The way that addictions work is like, if you look at porn, often works similar to the way that certain drugs work in your system. Yeah. So you have different neurotransmitters in your body. Say you have 4 of them, right? But it comes in such a high level that it overloads these. Yeah. That you get a higher high than you've ever had before in any other part of life. That's what makes it addicting, because you're like, I'm going back to that. Yeah. Like, you can't get this in a natural way. That's why porn, you need novelty porn. So it hits these things. It hits these 4, and your brain's like, that was a lot. That was too much. And so what it does is it shuts down a few of the your transmitters. So then you only have 2 transmitters, because you're like, I was at 130% and I was not capable for it. Yeah. So the next time you do it, you comes back and you're like, oh, I'm not getting the same high because my transmitters have shut down. So I need to get more. So that's why I need novelty porn. That's when I need more sex. That's when I need more women. That's when I need more this. That's when I need more food. That's when I need more a bigger explosion on the TV show. That's when I need more drama in The Bachelor. That's when I need more of this and this, because you're trying to get the same high as before, but your body's like, dude, that was way too much. I can't handle it. And so when we're getting the right nutrients, when we're exercising, when we're getting sleep, like when we're doing all this stuff, and we're what we're essentially doing is we're trying to like repopulate some of those neurotransmitters again, so that it's bringing everything down. Yeah. So that's your body. And then just, are you in regular relationship? Are you having conversations with people about what's really going on? Yeah. Again, hopes, fears, dreams, all those things are good ways to go. Here's what's going on beyond here, moving down here in a little bit. Relationally, those things just start helping you get connections. Yeah. It's a good foundation. A lot of it depends on what is it you're lacking, what is it you're missing, and then how do you pursue those things. Yeah. Can I tell one quick story?
Of course.
I think it's helpful. Yeah. I had a friend who was a server in town, a waiter, and he had some struggle with same-sex attraction in his past. Had to walk through a lot of it, and he's like, oh, I think I've walked through it now. Yeah. And he was serving one night, and this guy walks in, and he just felt himself just be like, oh, I'm very attracted to that person. Yeah. And you're like, whoa. And he's like, oh, okay. He's like in the middle of taking an order. So he like finishes the order and just goes in the back, and he's like, okay, Jesus, what happened? Like, what did he represent? And he said, he represented a good father to you. And he looked back and he's like, oh, he came in with his wife and 2 kids. Wow. And he's like, so what am I looking for? He's like, you're looking for healthy male relationships. He's like, you're not sexually attracted to him. You and your dad aren't close. You're disconnected. You're going through a lot in life right now. You need some older men to kind of step into your life, to speak life into you, to give you the reassurance and competence. And he just represented that to you, but you sexualized it. And he's like, oh, so he like just grabs his phone real quick, texts his mentor, and some other guys are going, hey, I'd love to meet up this week. Just need to connect. Great. Like, boy got off walked away from the edge because he's just knowing, okay, let me check, what is it I need? Okay, and here's another way I can move forward.
That's so good. Yeah, walking yourself off the cliff is so, with the help of the Holy Spirit, is so vital. Because you will easily jump. You're like, well, this happened, so zoop, I'm off the cliff now.
I can't help it. I'm just attracted.
Yeah, and then you're like, wait, and the Lord's like, you weren't actually attracted. You just needed healthy men in your life. Yeah. That's such a good example. I love it.
One thing, I wrote a blog called "You're Not a Victim to Your Attraction," because I hear a lot in the dating and relationship world, And one little tip is just going, hey, stop using the word attracted.
Yeah.
And use the word drawn to. Because at that point you're like, I'm attracted, and that feels like it's a tractor beam, just like, I can't help but escape. I'm like, oh, I'm drawn to this person. You're like, oh, what is it that draws me to this person?
That's so
and
good.
Then it suddenly stops you from sexualizing or like, I have to have them, but it's going, oh, there's something about them that is drawing me to them. And then you can find it and go, oh, that's the thing I want. There's a better version of going to get it.
Yeah, that's so good. I want to, one of the things I want to talk about before we end this episode is kind of a punchy question. All the sound effects we can get. I think in the church we can often, I think we're getting better. I think what we are coming away from is almost isolating addiction and putting it as a no-go, no-talk about kind of topic, and bringing it back into reality. But I want to ask the question, Abram, a little drum roll. Can addiction and Holy Spirit coexist? Silence has filled the air.
Can addiction and Holy Spirit coexist?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, because addictions are essentially ways that we've learned to cope with life that are broken.
Yeah.
I'm like, whether you identify your behavior as broken or not, it's not the fullness that God intended. Or whether you identified it as an addiction or not, it's just not the fullness that God intended.
Yeah.
And there's healthier ways. The fact that you recognize it as an addiction or recognize the unwanted behavior and have a desire to go somewhere else is evidence that the Holy Spirit is inside of you actively working.
So good.
So if you're going like, well, the Holy Spirit's like, I don't lose you. It's like, no, he's the thing inside of you going, son, you're better than this. Like, I have hope for you.
So good.
Like, I have more inside of you. He's the driving force that's going to bring the freedom.
Yeah.
And you can first notify it just by going, oh, this actually isn't okay.
Yeah. That's so good. Holy Spirit is not afraid of your addiction.
No.
And so, which is so beautiful because you have a story.
I do. So you go ahead.
No, I just think it's beautiful that the Holy Spirit is not afraid of our mess, but Jesus paid for it.
Yeah.
And so we are just on the earth in this grand scheme of things, just trying to figure out and learn how do I live the life that Jesus paid for unto the fullness, unto the full freedom and full wholeness that he paid for in my body, my mind, my spirit, my emotions, my relationships, etc., etc. And in the midst of it, he's like, I'm not afraid of you. Yeah. And so, do you want to share your story?
I like I said, I'd struggled with masturbation for years.
Yeah.
And at one point it had been like so long, and I was at the point of like marking days. I'm like, I'm this many days free, not realizing it was about being whole rather than just not doing the behavior. And I had masturbated and I was beating myself. I was so frustrated, saying it with myself and just outside. And I was like, God, I was like, crying. And I was like, God, please don't leave me. Like, please don't. Like, I know he wouldn't. But at the time, you're just like,
God, don't break up with me.
From me. Like Psalm 51. I'm like, create me up your heart. I was like, I just bawling. I was like, I'm so sorry. He's like, Abram. He's like, he goes, I have way too much invested in you to leave now.
Yeah.
And I was like, huh?
Like, what?
And like, he's so kind. And this time he just knew I needed a little like, But he was like, yeah, I gave you Jesus. He's like, you should have seen you before.
Yeah.
It's like if I was remodeling a car and got to the point where the engine was fixed, the body work was done, I'm putting the doors back on, and we're about to paint, and there's a little chip there. And he's like, I'm not throwing away the entire car off of this. He's like, I have way too much invested in you to leave you now.
So good.
He's like, it's just part of the process. I'm going to take you there.
That's so good. I love it. I would love to know what you think about how are some ways that we can support people in our life. Like, if we know people who are struggling with addiction, what are some ways that we can support them, come alongside them, and be healthy voices in their life of, hey, I want to partner with your freedom and your wholeness. Yeah. What are some ways that we can do that?
I think I would first start is you have to kind of be aware of yourself to see, is me engaging with this going to trigger me and cause me to spiral? And so some of those times you're like, I can't, I've been down this road. I've seen my dad be an alcoholic and this is too much for me to handle right now. Yeah. And I'm not going to be able to show up well for you. Or you're like, this relationship, whatever it is, just kind of checking yourself first and going, okay, do I actually have the grace? Do I have the ability to come into this and to be able to partner with you in this.
Yeah.
And if not, then you're like, that means that God has somebody else who will.
Yeah.
But that's a part that you can engage God with for your healing.
Yeah.
Because so then I think, kind of highlighting some other stuff we said is like trying to be curious rather than judgmental.
Yeah.
Realizing, hey,
So
this is going to be a process.
Mm-hmm.
We're not counting the days.
Yeah.
But we're looking at going, okay, what wounds inside? Even trying to look at them and going, what happened? I like to ask questions, just going, tell me about your relationship with your parents. Tell me about like what you were like as a kid. Tell me what you dreamed about as a kid.
Yeah.
Because you can find innocence, you can find compassion for them. And a lot of, we see so many people dealing with porn now, which we can keep coming back to, but they were exposed between 8 and 11 years old is the average age. And I'm like, bro, you weren't supposed to know anything about that. No one you were sexually abused and assaulted. Like that's a form of sexual assault, is exposure to this type of stuff. And so being able to meet them in the compassion there, I'm going, oh, you're not a pervert for looking at porn or this different stuff that it's led to.
Yeah.
You got wounded and you weren't protected. And so let me come back here and see you as that, and then partner with you for your healing, not to stop your behavior. Like if you focus on the behavior, you're going to be as frustrated and on the roller coaster as them as well.
Yeah.
But if you're going, hey, I want to help you pursue that wholeness and be healed and whole there, then I can meet you there.
Yeah.
Practically, lots of encouragement, lots of like reaffirm, and this doesn't change the way I view you. Thanks so much. Like, honestly, it takes a lot of bravery, a lot of confidence, a lot of boldness to be able to admit this, even each time. And so being able to celebrate that and going, hey, I really appreciate you sharing that. Like, it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of boldness to show up. Thanks for bringing me in the process. Just encouraging them, being able to ask discovery questions.
Yeah.
Hey, so what was happening here? Depending upon the person, you may need to help them stick with some accountability follow-up. You're like, hey, you talked about seeing a counselor. It's been about 4 weeks and you still haven't called them. What's going on? Why aren't you calling them? Sometimes you need a little butt kick to go, I want to help. Like you said, you wanted to get free. Yeah. I'm here. I care more about you than your comfort level right now. Yeah. So like, let me partner with you to get what you ultimately want. Yeah. But remember that you're coming alongside of them. You can't want it more than they do. Yeah, like, for sure. I'm sure you guys have talked about. But if you come in and you can speak the freedom, tell them the freedom, prophesy, show it to them. Yeah. Because there's times that you're in the hole and you can't see it and you don't think that's possible. But you can't try to take the reins more than they do. For sure. And so being able to give yourself permission, to give them permission for it to take as long as they need to take. Yeah. And then give your permission to not take the reins and going, hey, I'm here to support you. I'm not here to drive the train. For sure. You tell me what you need. What do you need right now? How can I help you? Yeah. And not take false responsibility either. For sure. And in that, also loving them and supporting them can look like, hey, I can't be the one to directly support you, but me loving you looks like I'm going to give you resources for a counselor. Yeah. I'm going to help you find someone that has experience in this to help you walk through this, where you can love and support them by not being the one directly saying the things they need to hear and doing those things. I don't know what that knock in your car is, but I know a good mechanic. Yeah. Or even if it is too triggering for you to go, hey, I love you. I so appreciate you sharing this. Mm-hmm. Honestly, it hits me in a place that I realize I need to take care of. Yeah. I don't think I'll be able to journey with you. I still love you so much. Yeah. I'm so for you. I'm not distancing from you. This is an area that is a little too tender for me to be able to help you with right now. So let me help you find somebody that can help you. Yeah. This is so good. Yeah. Abram, thank you so much for coming on. Yeah, this is amazing. Can you tell us, if there are people who want to find out more about Moral Revolution, where can they find resources, your blog posts, all of those things? Yeah, moralrevolution.com is the best place to start. Yeah. Let's Talk About It podcast on all the platforms. We got YouTube channels. If you go to moralrevolution.com, you'll be able to find all our socials and articles, podcasts, all that stuff are there. Yeah, that's amazing. So, oh man, this is amazing. I love that we're giving people resources to live in freedom and wholeness and breakthrough, because it's time for breakthrough. That's it. And so guys, if you are like, this episode meant a lot to me, let us know. Email us at tc.events@bethel.com. Let us know on social media. Or you can find more resources of how do I book a sozo? I need a counseling session. We also have an addiction and trauma program where if you're like,
I need help coming out of this addiction. Praise the Lord. I'm so excited that you are ready to make that step and come out and find freedom in that. And we have resources and people who are ready to help you walk through that with so many different ways. And so you can find all of that at tcbethel.com, and we'd love to help you. And so, yeah, this is amazing. Thanks for coming again.
Thanks for having me. It's
great. All right. So until next time, guys, we'll see you later.